Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris J, and I'm going to talk with you about the energy of the week ahead. I am looking from August 12th to August 18th, so noting right there that this is bringing us right up to the cusp of our Aquarius Full Moon, which is on the 19th. I have a video on that linked below. If you've already watched it, it might even be a nice idea to listen to parts of it again after you've heard this, because this is really going to clarify the buildup that is taking us into that Aquarius full moon, which is really significant because Uranus is squaring the sun and the moon. And so what is taking us up there? It's a lot. There's a lot of energy this week. It is a week to be mindful. Let's say that Mercury retrograde is very strong this week, and it has a lot going on in its own story. And its story is talking to the bigger energy of this week, which is Mars coming into its conjunction with Jupiter, which is happening in Gemini. But first, I actually want to start out talking about something that we just come into this week with, and that is Juno. So if you follow my daily posts where I write the daily astrology, and I do that here on YouTube in the community tab, and I do it on my Instagram and also Facebook, there I've been talking about Juno a bit because she's been having these big conversations. She's been talking to Neptune, to Pluto, and now she's trining Sedna. Okay, so we come into the week with Juno trining Sedna. And Juno is where we look to. She's an asteroid, and she's where we look to for divine feminine energy of our commitments. She is traditionally the goddess of marriage, and so she is our commitments, whether they are in love partnerships, love friendships, and or business. Wherever we give our word, she's where we also hold ourselves with integrity, because she had so much integrity. And she's in Libra, and she is trining Sedna, who is the Inuit goddess of the ocean, and she is very far away from the earth. So Sedna's energy becomes very potent when she's talking directly with a very small orb to one of our kind of personal planets and or asteroids in this case. And so Sedna is this great transformative energy. Sedna speaks to archetypal wounds that often play out in our lives through personal traumas and or intergenerational traumas, and the way that we hold them and carry them in our personal life. And Sedna's story is so important because she shares how there is this seed of potential for incredible transformation in this life, and her story shows how it is that very difficult, and in her case a trauma, that allows the seed to transform. And through her own personal archetypal wounding, which involves her own father, she becomes, in her death, she becomes the ocean. She becomes the goddess of the ocean. She becomes the wisdom of the beings that are in there, the whales. And so Sedna is talking to Juno, and she is, just keeping in mind that we're starting this week out with this incredible conversation of divine feminine energy, pulling us into a supportive awareness and embodiment of how we show up in relationship, how we show up in relationship with ourselves, how we show up, how do our relationships allow us to transform in the ways that are most beneficial to our soul's journey. And that could be a question on the table, but that energy is here. And so just knowing that there is something about showing up in our commitments, also with our commitments with ourselves, where we want to show up in a way that is honoring ourselves in our transformative journey, especially if we are someone that's carrying kind of the resonance of archetypal wounds in our own life. We do not need to silence ourselves. We do not need to people please for the sake of that. And this is transformative energy that's wanting to support us as we journey into a pretty big week. So Mercury retrograde is very important because Mercury is switching signs this week. Mercury starts out in Virgo, and then on the 14th, Mercury is going to switch into Leo. Okay, so we're having that shift. Mercury retrograde, recalling that it is a time for revision, it is a time for realignment, it is a time for reconsideration, sometimes redirection, sometimes just stepping back and taking a pause and seeing what's emerging. And Mercury governs our thoughts and our understanding and our communication, and it's our mind and the way that we express ourselves. And there's a lot of energy around expressing ourselves around people expressing this week. And we do want to do our best effort to be mindful here. And I'll get to that in a minute. But as Mercury moves, and again, so on the 14th, Mercury is going to move from Virgo energy into Leo energy. And as that happens, Mercury is moving from an in conjunct with Pluto into an in conjunct with Neptune. Okay, and so here we have Mercury, who has a lot of information this week, is kind of starting the week out in this major conversation, an attentional kind of push and pull with that great transformer Pluto, and then the great spiritualizer. And so they're you know, starting right out, there could be things breaking down, and that again could be coming through in our understanding and our thoughts. It depends where you have that switch from Virgo into Leo. But ultimately, then we're moving with Mercury retrograde into Leo. And this is to reconsider our joy, reconsider how our joy gets to be expressed, how it comes into our daily life, how it comes into our relationships, into our work, all the places where our mind and communication happen, which is every facet of our life. And so Leo is, you know, this is also reconsidering how we move from a Leo that's driven by fear. And when Leo's driven by fear, it is performing for the sake of external validation. It is not being able to move from its authentic joy. And so how Mercury's asking us, can we bring some of that authentic joy of our authentic self into who we are and how we're moving through the world? And Mercury's got some questions for us around that. So as Mercury moves in, and again, that happens on the 14th, we have something very big happening. We have the conjunction of Jupiter and Mars in Gemini. And so this is happening on the 14th. It's going to happen at around 16 degrees, but we're feeling this from the time I upload this video, we're feeling it. It's really building on the 13th, the 14th, the 15th. And this is big energy. This is Mars moving through Gemini, conjuncting Jupiter. So right there, Mars in Gemini does not want to stop. Mars does not want to be pulled aside. Mars wants to expand as it comes into Jupiter. It wants to move quickly. It wants to move in a big way. It wants to express itself strongly. Here is where we could definitely be witnessing, perceiving, potentially ourselves participating in a lot of words that are maybe a little rash, a lot of words that aren't necessarily mindful. And so if we feel ourselves, if you feel yourself getting pulled in, and we all know the feeling when we're getting pulled into one of those arguments, when we know it's not really going to go anywhere, when we know that we cannot actually witness each other and we cannot actually be heard, we want to step back. We want to do everything we can to step back, because most likely, especially if it's happening around 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, it's probably not going to seek the joyful resolution that we would like. It will, and it can, if we step back. And so just knowing that that's there, because Mercury retrograde is anchoring in, is the traditional ruler of Gemini energy. And so that's why this Mars is right away kind of set up to fail in certain ways. Now, failure could be the greatest discovery of the week of August, because that failure most likely is redirection. That failure most likely is, oh, I hadn't really considered this. Oh, I hadn't really considered that reality, because Saturn's going to have something to say about this conversation too. Oh, I need to look at it this way. Oh, I just need to wait for some circumstances to shift on their own, and then I have the go ahead. It's also about timing, because Saturn is coming in. And so but Mars conjunct Jupiter in Gemini doesn't want to be told to stop. And so just knowing that there is that push and pull there, but this is where we can mindfully come into this. And at this point, Mercury is in Leo. So if you can work through it creatively, if you can go to your journal, if you can go to your art practice, if you can go to dancing it out, however it comes, dance the energy out, take it to the woods and walk it out, but let the energy move, and ideally let it transform. And that's where an art practice can be really, really useful here. And Mars is going to just move ahead from that exact conjunction, and then Mars and Jupiter are going to square Saturn in Pisces. And so this is the next layer. This is also the stop, because Saturn comes into this conversation. It comes in at a square, and Saturn is going to be in its exact square with Jupiter right before we come into the full moon. Okay. And so Saturn says there's something else to be seen. There's something else to consider. And Saturn is in Pisces, and Saturn is retrograde. And so Saturn in Pisces, right away, this has something to do with our spiritual path. You're watching this video, I talk about astrology and spirituality. We are working with this as a modality of supporting our spiritual paths. And so Saturn in Pisces, being part of this conversation, says there's something that needs to shift. There's something that you haven't considered. There's something that has to be let go of, however that's happening. But just take a pause and see what needs to release, or see what's happening. And as this is happening, as we get to the end of this week, Saturn is directly opposite Venus, and Venus is square that Jupiter and that Mars. So Venus is here, and there's something about our values, and she's in Virgo. And there's something about our values, and something that we can actually become a little bit more devoted to in the daily, in the small mind body practice that might even open us up to understanding from an embodied perspective what the heck is going on. We can all take those little glimpses. So if you have those mind body practices, you really want to lean into them this week, because also all of this Mercury retrograde, all of this Gemini energy, it's a lot for the nervous system. And there's more for the nervous system, because Mercury retrograde is going to square Uranus. So that's going to happen on the 17th. Okay. So Mercury retrograde is going to square Uranus on the 17th as it's coming into its conjunction with Vesta and the sun. So Vesta is the goddess of the sacred hearth, the sacred fires within, the creative fires, the fires that literally give us life. She's the divine feminine energy. So she's here, and she's suggesting that there's some healing going on. There's something, and she's in Leo. There's something about our creative joy that's also healing. And she's with the sun, and Mercury retrograde is going to conjunct the sun, and Mercury retrograde is going to be square Uranus, and that Uranus is going to be in an exact square with the sun in Vesta on the 19th for our full moon. So there also could be insights, and this is where we move through the first stage of this week. We move through that Jupiter and that Mars conjunction. We witness what's happening within us externally, collectively. We witness what's wanting to realign on our spiritual path as it connects to our values. And perhaps then we get some insights, because Uranus is squaring Mercury retrograde. And here, yes, it could be wild card energy that comes up. It could take us into places that we didn't think we were going. But if we're witnessing that, if we're opening to that, we could also get some insights. This could also come through dream. This can come through stream of consciousness writing. This can come through so many different places, especially as we're just opening to it. Synchronicities, Uranus synchronicities, talking to Mercury retrograde, paying attention to the synchronicities, spending a little time feeling into them and what the messages are that are coming for you, because this is Mercury, the messenger of the gods, coming from higher mind, which is Uranus. And so this is really lovely and supportive. It also is a ton of energy for the nervous system. So that is where we might want to ground. We might want to take naps. We might want to move slowly. We might want to feel into the balance between needing to move the body and really rest the body. And also with all that Gemini energy there too, it's important to really ask, do I actually want to exercise, or do I need a nap? A lot of us get conditioned to think, no, we have to go move. We have to go be fast. We have to go into this very yang place. And sometimes the nervous system really just needs to chill. Sometimes it really just needs to take a nap. So asking, and it might be both. And so just asking and checking in with the body and seeing what's happening as we move through this. Because it is a lot of energy, and it's taking us into our full moon, which Uranus is squaring that sun and the moon on the 19th. So more insights coming, potentially wild card energy, but also just remembering that we don't need to get pulled in to that intensity if it is coming up, if we're witnessing it, and that we can be with ourselves, and that we can go into that reflective place. And Mercury retrograde loves its reflective place. It loves it because that is when so many messages get to come. And it's hard, okay? I'm just a messenger. I got to practice this too. I totally recognize that it is hard to listen to it when we want to just push, or we want to fight what's happening, or we don't want to pause, or we want to try and get into the Zoom meeting, but Zoom is just not working. And so there is a redirection right there, right? And it's like we put our hands up and we say, okay, redirect me. What is happening and what wants to be seen right now? And just playing around with that question, especially when Mercury retrograde is in Leo. Play is part of Leo. So really inviting a spirit of play if and when you get redirected, even if, especially if it's around big things, because this could be big things in our life coming up. And just trying to keep, you know, the spirit of joy, the spirit of curiosity. Gemini is curious, trying to keep that curious energy, even if there's like a tense moment, and trying to just pull back up that mindful reminder, okay, what can I get curious about right now? What can I redirect myself to right now? And seeing where it takes us. And that is the path. And I will see you when I see you, and be well.